So often in the spring when we start planting our landscape, we're looking for a plant that will check all of those boxes. And today we have one that checks most of them. In fact, it is native. It is hardy from zones 4 to 9, which means it covers most of the U.S., major continental U.S. It can be used in the container as well as the landscape. It has early spring blooming flowers that can also be used for cut flowers to bring into your home. Now, the foliage also comes in a range of variegations, which add a nice interest throughout the garden. Now, the foliage also is evergreen. Today we're going to talk about Heucheras, and this is one that you're probably familiar with. This particular hybrid is called Purple Palace. While it's an oldie, it is a goodie. It was chosen as the perennial plant of the year back in 1991. You can see that it has kind of that dark leaf. Now, under more exposure to the sun, it's going to start kind of lightening up and become more of a bronzy green color. Down here we have one that is kind of the one to compare for the dark foliage, and this one's called Obsidian, and it's actually one that a lot of the dark Heucheras or coral bells are compared to. Now, the nice thing about this one in comparison to the Purple Palace is it's actually going to hold its color regardless of the sun exposure. The other thing you might notice about the leaf margins is they're a little bit more scalloped or rounded, which kind of gives you a little bit of a different texture. Some Heucheras, such as Frosted Violet, have more of a serrated edge. Now, Frosted Violet's going to get a little bit taller at 2 feet in height and spread. It has silver purple foliage with dark venation and offers soft pink flowers that really pop against that dark foliage. As we continue looking at some of those darker colored Heucheras, we have one here called Dark Secret. Now, this is one you're going to want to put in a little bit more shade because with more sun exposure, it will lose a little bit of this color. But I really like this color because it's not only a dark purple, but it actually has sort of a really dark emerald color to the leaf as well. But what's nice is underneath it maintains that darker burgundy color. So with our Oklahoma winds that make those leaves kind of blow around, you're going to see those flashes of color against each other. The other thing you'll notice on the margins of this particular leaf is that they tend to be a little bit more ruffled, again showing you some of that dark burgundy color underneath there. Now we have another one that's starting to lighten up the garden a little bit, and this particular one is called Silver Gumdrop. Now you can see it has more of an iridescent sheen to the leaf, and it's also going to be topped with more of these flower panicles that add a nice little color. Now, all of these coral bells or Heucheras have this kind of dainty flower to them, which adds a little bit of fun cheerfulness to the garden, but really it's the foliage that's going to persist throughout the season that gives you such that color impact in your landscape. Now, if you want to highlight your garden even more, we've got a few more to take a look at. Now, as we follow that color spectrum, you can always add more color into your garden by getting some of the Heucheras that have some reds and yellows in them. So here in front of us, we have one called Galaxy. You can see it's losing some of that darker burgundy color and trading it in for more of a hot pink color as the leaves are mottled with splashes of hot pink on it. There's also one called Georgia Peach, which shows more venation. In fact, it kind of looks like artwork, like somebody has actually taken a pencil and drawn the veins on those leaves. It's quite nice, actually. So here we have another one that's going to bring more of that red color, and this one's called Magma. And the nice thing about it is you're going to get a little bit more height on it, as it will top out about 2 feet with the flowers extending that reach up to 3 feet. Again, they're going to be those nice kind of airy panicles of small dainty flowers. We also have one here behind us called Caramel. Now this one, as you can see, we're starting to get a little bit lighter, so it's going to go more into those apricot and copper tones with only a few of the darker burgundy leaves to it. Now, Caramel was actually discovered as a seedling, and they're not quite sure of the lineage, but they think it might be Heuchera villosa. And Heuchera villosa is actually a native to southeastern U.S. And because of that, any of the hybrids from it tend to be a little bit better adapted to hot, humid climates. Another Heuchera you might check into is Citronelle. it also was discovered as a support of this caramel, meaning that that lineage is also more adapted to the humid, hot conditions. So as you can see, there are quite a range of colors that you can add into your landscape using Heucheras. And we've only just begun to touch on some of the introductions that have been made over the last couple of decades. Because there are so many new introductions, there's actually more hybrids on the market now than there are actual species. But all of these hybrids, for the most part, have been made by 5 species that are native to North America. Now, depending on the lineage of those hybrids might depend on how well they do in, say, sun or shade. Because of those 5 species, some are more adapted to like rocky conditions and some are more adapted to the woodland conditions. And unfortunately, we don't always know the lineage of some of our hybrids. Now you can see here, most of ours are planted in dapple sun or shade garden, which is an appropriate environment for most of your Heucheras. So if you're questioning the lineage or the environment to put them in, you might look at sort of a shade garden. Now in the shade, they can actually handle a drier soil condition, which is actually a really nice environment, considering oftentimes in the shade garden, we tend to have more root competition for that moisture. If you're going to push them into the sunlight, you want to give them a little bit more moisture, especially in those summer months. So the nice thing about Heucheras is they really work well transitioning from that sun to the shade garden. And while we often think of hostas in the shade garden, Heucheras are a nice companion plant to those hostas. And even more beneficial than just those hostas is the fact that this herbaceous foliage will persist all winter long.
We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. You can also find even more videos on our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.